Maya's heart raced as the flight attendant's harsh words shattered her excitement. She stood at the entrance of first class, her dreams of a fancy flight fading away in an instant. "I have a ticket," she said, gripping the boarding pass tightly, trying to fight against the unfairness. "This area is off limits," the attendant replied, her gaze cold and dismissive. Maya felt disbelief wash over her. She began, but the attendant cut her off, waving her away like she was irrelevant. Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment as whispers traveled through the aisle, some passengers glancing at her with judgment. She had never felt such open discrimination before, and the sudden rejection stung deeply. The airplane buzzed with the laughter of wealthy passengers, their voices rising above the soft hum of the engines. Maya stepped further inside, remembering the thrill she felt when she boarded just moments ago. She had imagined the nice service and the comfort of first class, but now she felt like an outsider in a world that wasn't for her. Elegant suits and expensive handbags surrounded her, creating a bubble of privilege. Maya retreated to her assigned seat in economy class, surrounded by families and travelers, their chatter a welcome sound compared to the nearby luxury. Yet even here she felt the weight of judgment. A few heads turned, and eyes darted between first class and her small space, marking the line between wealth and exclusion. The laughter of first-class passengers echoed with a sense of entitlement, reminding her that they questioned her right to be there at all. She recalled her father's words on privilege. Some people are born into it, while others have to fight hard for their place in the world. It made her question her own journey. Was she really welcome here? As Maya settled into her economy seat, she felt a wave of reality crash over her. This trip was supposed to be a joyous escape, yet the sharp contrast between first class and economy was stark. The cushioned seats of first class and the posh amenities around her were a cruel reminder of the barriers she faced. Amid the smiles and the luxury, she felt like a ghost haunting their world, a reminder of the inequalities that divided them. The passengers in first class seemed unaware of the realities beyond their cocoon. All around her, laughter mixed with the sound of champagne glasses clinking, masking the unspoken truth. Not everyone could access this world of delight. The deeper she looked, the more she realized that being in that airplane was much more than just traveling between cities. It was about the unspoken rules of belonging and exclusion. She had to prove herself worthy enough to share the same space as those privileged passengers, and the weight of that truth pressed heavily on her. Maya longed to belong, but the louder whispers about her race made her feel like an intruder in a world built for others. She reminded herself of her father's wisdom. It was up to her to break down the barriers that kept people like her out of spaces they belonged in. Maya thought about her family, especially her father, Mr. Parker. He had worked hard to achieve everything he had, showing her the power of determination. Every Saturday morning, they would volunteer together at the local community center, where he often spoke passionately about fairness and equality. "We must be the change we want to see," he would say, his eyes filled with hope and strength. Their discussions fueled her dreams of a better world, but moments like today reminded her of the harsh realities outside their home. Mr. Parker taught Maya that love and action went hand in hand. It was his strong belief in justice that inspired her. Together, they shared laughter, deep conversations, and family stories, which only strengthened their bond against the challenges they faced. But he also shared stories that hinted at historical struggles. Maya knew these tales weren't just memories. They were lessons about the fight they all needed to continue. "You carry our legacy," he would remind her, telling her to use her voice for those who felt unheard. That thought echoed in Maya's mind, pushing her to confront the injustice swirling around her and inspire others to stand together. As the airplane climbed higher, Maya felt the weight of reality pressing down on her. Her dreams of luxury and fair treatment vanished, replaced by the hard truth of discrimination. Staring out the small window, she watched the fluffy clouds float past, a barrier between her hopes and the world's prejudice. With each passing moment, her humiliation turned into determination. The anger within her sparked the desire for change. She had faced many struggles, from whispers in school to sideways glances that told her she didn't belong. Now she felt even more isolated. How could she demand her place in a world that constantly reminded her of her differences? With each hurtful memory, she remembered her father's lessons on fighting for what was right. She realized that every painful experience could fuel her desire to create change. As they flew through the clouds, Maya made a silent promise to herself. She would redefine her story, standing against oppression. She understood that the journey wouldn't be easy, but she had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The anger she felt transformed into a commitment to use her voice, not just for herself but for everyone who suffered in silence. In the economy cabin, Maya's thoughts turned to her friends, those who often didn't understand her struggles. Some made jokes about their differences, unaware of how their words hurt. She felt lonely and carried the weight of shared pain, while everyone else seemed free to laugh and enjoy. But then she thought of her father's support, his belief in her lighting a fire in her heart. He had always been there when she felt lost, reminding her that she was strong and deserving of every chance. He had comforted her when she shared her worries about not fitting in, promising to always believe in her potential despite what others said. Those moments of love instilled a sense of purpose within her. Maya reflected on her journey so far and knew she was more than simply her skin color or the doubt others placed on her. She would carry the dreams of her family forward, reclaiming her story and embracing her place in the world, no matter how difficult the fight would be. Maya sat in her room, staring blankly at the wall, her heart heavy with the memory of the flight attendant's cruel words. "You are not welcome here," the phrase echoed in her mind, reminding her that this wasn't just a single incident. It was part of a larger narrative she couldn't escape. She recalled the faces of classmates who watched, their expressions a mix of curiosity and amusement, as if her humiliation was entertainment. There was a boy who whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Why is she even trying?" The laughter that ensued was like a dagger to her heart, making her feel small and unseen. Maya wrestled with her emotions, a storm brewing inside her. This incident was a painful reminder that racism wasn't confined to isolated events. It seeped into her everyday life, influencing the way people saw her and interacted with her. The hurt festered as she tried to push it down, but it was a wound that wouldn't heal easily. She picked up her phone to scroll through social media, hoping for some distraction. Instead, she found a wave of posts discussing racism, some supportive, others painfully ignorant. Each scroll seemed to intensify her frustration and sadness, prompting her to clutch her pillow tightly, wishing for an escape from the reality of her skin color that felt like a burden instead of a blessing. When Maya arrived at school the next day, the hallways felt overwhelming. Students swarmed around her, laughter colliding with the cacophony of lockers slamming shut. Yet she felt utterly alone. It was in these crowded spaces that she felt the sting of isolation the most. In her first class, she sat at her usual desk trying to focus on the lesson. But whispers began to ripple through the room, drawing her attention. "Did you see her on that flight?" one girl said, and everyone turned to stare. What was she thinking? Maya's heart raced. She wanted to shrink away, to disappear into thin air. The insensitivity was bewildering, cutting deeper than a knife. Would they ever understand? She raised her hand, hoping to silence the whispers. "Can we talk about real issues? Like how racism affects us?" But her voice was lost amid the giggles that followed. Her teacher shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her gaze. "Let's focus on the lesson, Maya," was all he said, dismissing her plea for understanding. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks as disappointment washed over her. It was clear her concerns weren't taken seriously. During lunch, Maya sat with a few classmates, who usually supported her, but even they seemed hesitant. Questions that raised doubts about her worth drifted through her mind. Should she say something? Would it make her look like a troublemaker? She took a deep breath and tried to ignore the hurtful comments, but each dismissive glance chipped away at her confidence, leaving her feeling more alienated than ever. Maya couldn't shake the feeling of invisibility that followed her around the school. Each day, it seemed, she encountered barriers not just from students but from the administration that should have been her ally. The curriculum felt like a narrow window into history, one that often ignored the contributions of people like her. In history class, The teacher launched into a lesson focused on figures from the past, highlighting achievements that seemed to forget entire cultures. Maya raised her hand, her stomach knotting with nerves, but she couldn't bear to let the moment slip away. What about civil rights leaders like Martin Luther, King Jr., or Rosa Parks? Why don't we discuss how their struggles are still relevant today? The teacher shot her a look that clearly said, "Not now," before redirecting the class back to the pre-approved lesson plan. Frustrated, Maya glanced around at her classmates. Some barely seemed to be paying attention, their eyes glazed over, while a few nodded with vague understanding. It drove home the idea that her experiences and those of her ancestors were merely footnotes, if they were included at all. After class, she approached the principal's office, her heart pounding. She hoped to discuss the absence of diversity in the curriculum, but the secretary ushered her away, saying that the principal was too busy to speak with students about such matters. The dismissal felt like a wall slamming shut in her face. As she walked away, a wave of hopelessness washed over her. The school was meant to be a safe space for learning, yet it felt like a place where her identity was continually erased. With each day that passed, the lack of representation gnawed at her. How could a school that prided itself on excellence ignore the realities of its students? Maya's heart ached as she realized that without change, future generations could face the same battles. As the weeks went by, Maya began to notice a divide among her peers. Some friends stood by her, while others seemed to silently support the mocking in the hallways. One afternoon, she overheard a group of students laughing about the flight incident, sharing snippets and misguided opinions. "Maya does too much," one friend, Sarah, sneered, to the delight of the others. Maybe if she acted normal, she wouldn't get in trouble. Heartbroken, Maya clenched her fists. Her trust felt shattered. Why weren't they standing up for her? The betrayal stung, causing her to question who she could rely on. Did her friendships mean anything if they could so easily turn against her? In the following days, Maya tried to reach out to another friend, Jake. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly during lunch. But Jake shrugged, glancing away. "It's just easier if we don't get involved, you know?" His words hit her like a punch. Easier? This wasn't just enjoyable gossip, it was her life they were talking about. The weight of those friendships pressed heavily on her heart, drowning out the warmth of laughter and camaraderie. Alone in a crowded room, she felt more isolated than ever, reminding her that sometimes even friends could become foes. Maya's frustration boiled over during a school assembly intended to tackle diversity and inclusion. As the principal spoke about the school's commitment to respect, she felt her patience wearing thin. Disparate voices and hollow promises flooded her mind. Why aren't we addressing the real issues? She thought, the tension in her chest building. When it came time for questions, she shot her hand up without hesitation. "Can we talk about how racism affects our school community?" The room fell silent, eyes darting toward her. The principal shifted uncomfortably but nodded for her to go on. "I feel like there are issues that need addressing, and it seems like we're going in circles." One of her classmates shouted, "Why does it always have to be about race?" Groans followed, and Maya felt a wave of anger rush over her. "Because it affects us," she responded, her voice gaining strength. "I experience it every day. Why can't we discuss it openly?" The principal cleared his throat, attempting to regain control. "We're here to create a positive environment. Let's keep it respectful." Maya clenched her jaw, fighting for calm. Respect goes both ways. If you truly care about inclusion, we need to address these issues directly. A murmur swept through the crowd, some students applauding her bravery, while others shook their heads in disapproval. Then a teacher added softly, "Perhaps we should take this offline," attempting to diffuse the situation. But Maya stood her ground, feeling empowered by both the applause and the disapproval. She declared, "I refuse to sit down while our voices are drowned out. This is our school too." The room erupted into chaos, with some applauding and others shouting at her to be quiet. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. At that moment, Maya realized this confrontation was more than just a debate. It was a rallying cry for her fellow students, a chance to ignite change, even if it meant facing pushback. After the assembly, the school buzzed with mixed reactions. Maya walked through the halls, the atmosphere charged with tension. Some students approached her, offering support, while others looked away, unwilling to engage. During lunch, a group of students gathered, debating the issues she had raised. Some expressed disappointment in the lack of action, while others were resistant to change, favoring the status quo. Maya listened closely, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Why can't they see? She thought, recognizing the fear and resentment swirling in the air around her. Later that week, she attended a community meeting with her family, an event that had been organized to address racial tension following recent events. She entered the room, only to discover a mix of voices, some advocating for unity, while others stoked the flames of division. "There's no real problem," one man shouted. "This is all just people making excuses." Maya's heart sank as she watched her neighbors turn against each other. It was as though years of unspoken tension erupted with each harsh word. "We need to talk about the real experiences of our community," Maya said, her voice shaking as she spoke up. "It's time to confront these issues openly, not brush them under the rug." Some heads nodded, but others scoffed, dismissing her presence. "You don't even understand what the real world is like," an older woman snapped, glaring in her direction. Maya's resolve hardened. "But I do understand. This isn't just about me. It's about all of us. If we don't work together, we'll continue to tear each other apart." Despite her passion, she felt the weight of the room's resistance. It was disheartening to realize how divided her community was on such an important issue. Maya needed to find a way to bridge this gap, to make her neighbors see that they were all part of the same fight, the same struggle, and that unity was their strongest weapon. As Maya continued her journey of activism, she often found herself drawn back to the flight attendant's cold dismissal. The incident had become a symbol of the larger societal issues she was confronting. Each time she thought about it, the anger swelled inside her, pushing her to act instead of retreat. She gathered her notes, outlining a plan to address the unfair treatment in her community. The flight attendant's actions resonated with every encounter she had experienced over the years, a reminder that racism was woven deeply into the fabric of society. Maya decided to reflect on the incident through art. She organized a community art project, inviting friends and neighbors to contribute their interpretations of equality and justice. The initiative aimed to raise awareness and foster dialogue about discrimination. They painted murals that expressed their experiences and emotions, each brushstroke a declaration of identity and resilience. As the project unfolded, Maya saw the community come together in unexpected ways. People who had once stood on opposing sides began to collaborate, sharing their stories and listening to one another. Through art, relationships began to mend, breaking down barriers that had kept them apart. Maya felt a spark of hope igniting within her. The murals became a visual symbol of their joint fight against injustice, encouraging open conversations. She realized that confronting systemic injustice wasn't just about individual battles. It was about uniting as a community to create change. Maya reflected on the progress she and her friends had made since the art project. Each day brought new opportunities for dialogue, and she found herself increasingly confident. With the encouragement of her peers, she decided to organize a school forum addressing diversity and acceptance. They worked tirelessly to promote the event, creating flyers that listed the issues they wanted to discuss. On the day of the forum, the room buzzed with anticipation, a blend of excitement and nerves rippling through the attendees. As Maya stood at the front, she felt a surge of empowerment. "Today, we have a chance to speak up," she declared, looking out at the attentive audience. "Let's share our stories and learn from one another." The discussions began tentatively, but soon grew passionate. Students opened up about their experiences, later reflecting on their own fears, worries, and hopes. Maya encouraged them to speak freely, reframing their anger into action as individuals began to share. Something started to shift within the room. By the end of the forum, Maya knew they had achieved something significant. Everyone had faced their buried feelings, and it strengthened her resolve to continue fighting for justice. For every heartfelt story shared, more people offered their support, creating a sense of solidarity. As she left the forum that day, Maya could see the walls of isolation beginning to crack. Each small victory filled her with hope. The community was learning to communicate, to recognize the strength in their diversity. With every connection forged, chains of misunderstanding began to break, paving the way for understanding and acceptance. Maya's journey was transforming her into someone she hadn't fully recognized before. The shy girl who once hesitated to voice her thoughts now stood tall, empowered by her experiences. She felt her identity shifting as she embraced her role as an advocate for change. One evening, she sat in front of her mirror, studying the reflection staring back at her. She was no longer just Maya, the girl who felt marginalized and overlooked. She was now someone who had learned to fight, to lead, and to inspire. The struggles had molded her into a warrior for justice, determined to speak out against what she saw as wrong. At school, she noticed her peers approaching her for advice or support. It moved her to see that others were starting to view her through a new lens. She was no longer just a classmate or a victim. She was a leader, respected for her courage and determination. With each step she took, Maya understood that her identity was a tapestry woven from her past and her commitment to creating a better future. She began to fully embrace her ethnicity, recognizing it as a source of strength and pride. She had transformed her pain into purpose, using her experiences to uplift the voices of others who felt unheard. Maya felt a sense of urgency building within her. The time for change had come. She gathered her friends, sharing her vision for a larger movement aimed at raising awareness about systemic injustices in their community. "We need to take everything we've learned and turn it into action," she urged. The group brainstormed ideas, from organizing rallies to writing letters to local leaders. The energy in the room was electric as they unleashed their creativity, determined to make a difference. Together, they formulated a plan to host a community-wide event to promote discussions on equality. In the days that followed, they distributed flyers that provided information and encouraged everyone to join. Maya felt the anticipation swell, and the community began to buzz with interest. As the event approached, she thought about the journey she had undertaken. Each obstacle she had faced had led her to this point, and she knew it was just the beginning. She believed in the power of their voices, and the festering anger she once felt transformed into hope. The event day arrived, and the turnout exceeded her expectations. Hundreds gathered to engage in conversations, share experiences, and listen to inspiring speakers. As Maya stood before the crowd, she felt a surge of pride. They were united in purpose, ready to take action against the injustices that had plagued them for too long. In that moment, she knew their movement was not just about her story. It was about everyone fighting for a better future. Maya curled up on her father's favorite armchair, the fabric soft against her skin. Mr. Parker sat across from her, his eyes warm and reassuring. "You know, Maya, the world can be tough," he began, his voice steady. "But you have a fire inside you that can change minds." She looked up, searching his face for reassurance. "But Dad, sometimes it feels like no one is listening. When I speak out, it just creates more distance." He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You have to remember that the loudest voices aren't always the ones that matter. It's the quiet support of those who believe in you that makes a difference. Your voice can challenge the norms." "I just want to be heard," she confessed, feeling the weight of her emotions. "I want people to understand what it's like to live in a world that seems determined to push me down." Mr. Parker smiled softly, nodding with understanding. "That desire is powerful. Don't let it fade because of intimidation. Speak your truth with courage, and be the advocate for those who can't." Maya felt a spark ignite in her chest. His words infused her with motivation, fueling her desire for justice. "I'll keep fighting, Dad. I won't let anyone silence me." "That's my girl," he replied, pride evident in his voice. "Remember, I'm always here for you." At school, Maya's heart sank as she overheard whispers between friends who once stood strong beside her. "She's making a big deal out of nothing," one girl said, rolling her eyes. Another chimed in, "Yeah, maybe if she was cooler, this wouldn't happen." Maya felt the betrayal stab deep within her. Her heart raced as she confronted them, her voice shaking. "Why are you saying those things? I thought you understood what I'm going through." The girls just shrugged, as if her pain were trivial. "We just think you're exaggerating," one replied dismissively. The weight of their comments hung heavily, filling her with a sense of isolation. Days turned into weeks, and she noticed the small, hurtful shifts in her friendships. Their dismissive attitudes left her feeling more alone. Each laugh that erupted behind her felt like a reminder of her struggles, only pushing her further from the very people she thought would support her. In contrast, her father's unwavering encouragement played over in her mind, amplifying her feelings of loneliness. The friends she had once trusted appeared to trivialize her struggle, making her question the very relationships she had held dear. She retreated into herself, battling feelings of isolation, all the while reminding herself that she was not alone in her fight. Her father's love became her anchor, even when the crowd she had once adored turned away. One afternoon, Maya approached Ms. Thompson, a passionate teacher known for her dedication to student welfare, seeking guidance. "Ms. Thompson, can we talk?" she asked, anxiety knitting her brow. "Of course, Maya. What's on your mind?" Ms. Thompson replied, sensing the urgency in her tone. Maya took a deep breath. "I feel really overwhelmed. It seems like nobody understands what I'm going through, and every time I try to speak out, I'm met with resistance." Ms. Thompson nodded, a knowing look in her eyes. "I've seen this happen too often. It's hard to challenge the status quo, but your feelings are valid. You have potential, and it's important to channel that into action." Maya sank into a nearby chair, feeling comforted by the discussion. "But how do I make a difference? It feels like I'm just shouting into the void." "Start by using your voice where it matters," Ms. Thompson advised warmly. "Join or start a club that focuses on social justice. Encourage discussions, share experiences, and help others find their voices too. You can create a space for understanding, not just for yourself, but for everyone." With each word, Maya's hope began to kindle. "You really think I can do that?" "I absolutely do. You have the passion, Maya. Use it to inspire others." That evening, Maya felt transformed. The seeds of activism began to take root in her heart. With Ms. Thompson's support in mind, she began outlining potential meetings in her notebook. She envisioned a network of students advocating for change, creating a united front to tackle the injustices they faced. As the weeks passed, Ms. Thompson became more than just a teacher. She became a mentor, guiding Maya through the challenges of activism with empathy and knowledge. Together, they began to form plans for a social justice club, laying the groundwork for change, a safe haven for students seeking to express their feelings around race and identity. Maya gathered with her family for dinner that first Friday of the month, a tradition that kept them connected despite their busy lives. The aroma of her mother's special recipe for gumbo filled the air, creating warmth and familiarity. Uncle James arrived, his presence commanding as he participated in the lively conversations. "You know," he began, looking at Maya with concern, "the world is still a tough place for people of color, no matter how much progress we've made." Maya nodded, eager to absorb the wisdom he had to share. "I felt it, Uncle. The discrimination is everywhere, even in school." Her father exchanged glances with her mother, sharing a moment of understanding. "We've faced these issues for generations," he said. "Even in our own family, we've had to fight for what we deserve." Her mother chimed in, "It's important to remember that every struggle comes with lessons. We've been instilled with strength from our ancestors, who fought for us." Maya leaned in, intrigued. "Like who, Mom? I want to know." Her mother smiled softly. "Your grandmother, she faced countless challenges. She taught me to stand up and be proud of who I am. Embrace your history and use it to fuel your fight." Uncle James added, "We have a duty to continue that legacy. Find strength in your roots, Maya, what you choose to do now shapes the future, not just for you, but for everyone who comes after. Directions were unfolding before Maya, showing her the importance of intergenerational connections. The stories and struggles deepened her understanding of resilience, urging her to keep her fight alive. As the night continued, laughter and stories filled the room, but it was the weight of their shared history that resonated the most. Maya left the table filled with pride and hope, ready to embrace the challenge not just for herself, but for her family and all those who came before her. Determined to turn her passion into action, Maya began to cultivate relationships with fellow students who shared her vision for change. She started by approaching her friends from the art project. "Hey, can we meet to discuss our ideas for the club?" Maya texted, excitement buzzing in her veins. When they gathered, she laid out her vision. "I want to create a safe space for us to talk about our experiences with race and identity. If we stand together, we can raise awareness and maybe even inspire real change." Laisha nodded, her eyes shining with interest. "I love that. It's about time we had these conversations. Let's do it." Soon, the group began meeting every week, brainstorming ways to engage more students. They formed a plan for their first rally, inviting everyone to share their stories and celebrate their diversity. Maya felt the sense of solidarity grow as the days passed. On the day of the rally, classmates trickled in, their diverse backgrounds adding to the vibrant energy circulating through the crowd. Banners of support hung above them, reminders that they were not alone. As they shared their experiences, her heart swelled. The raw honesty spilled forth, forging a bond among them. Whether it was a personal story of discrimination or tales of perseverance, each voice added layer after layer of perspective. Maya stood there, feeling empowered by the courage surrounding her. Allies were born in that moment, and they were united in their commitment to fight against injustice. Together, they made a promise to support one another in their collective journey. As Maya's activism grew, she found herself grappling with her friendships. Her best friend, Sarah, had started pulling away, making hurtful jokes and dismissive comments. "It's just easier not to engage, Maya," she'd say, rolling her eyes at the protests. Maya felt a mix of sadness and frustration. With each call that went unanswered, her loyalty to Sarah was tested. "What if I'm losing more than just a friend?" Maya pondered, feeling conflicted. In class, Sarah shared an article dismissing activism as overreacting. Maya couldn't hold back. "Sarah, how can you say that? These issues affect people like us daily. I just can't keep hearing about it. It's exhausting." Sarah shot back, her tone sharp. Maya's heart dropped. "Exhausting for you? What about me? This is my life." Torn between wanting to stand by her friend and the undeniable truth of discrimination, Maya struggled to differentiate between loyalty and self-respect. The laughter that once filled their conversations had turned into heavy silences, causing her to question who she truly belonged with. Determined to honor her voice, she understood that sometimes loyalty must bend. She realized it wouldn't serve her to stay silent for the sake of comfort. It was essential to surround herself with those who uplifted her, not the ones who weighed her down. In reflecting on this, Maya found clarity. She didn't have to settle for friendships that diminished her fight. With resolve surrounding her, Maya embraced her journey of activism. The energy she poured into her community began to transform her relationships. She focused on building connections with those who supported her fight, fostering a group of like-minded friends who shared her vision. During their weekly meetings, they brainstormed ideas on how to spread awareness in their school and community. "What if we organize a student-led discussion group?" Laisha suggested one afternoon. "We can create a safe space for everyone to voice their concerns." Maya beamed at the suggestion. "That's brilliant. We'll reach out to teachers too." As the group flourished, so did Maya's confidence. She began setting boundaries with friends who didn't understand her cause, realizing that valuing herself meant prioritizing her well-being. The new relationships she cultivated ignited a sense of joy and motivation within her. Maya discovered that encouragement came from those who shared her passion. Together, They wrote letters to the school board demanding changes in curriculum and organized community events that focused on diversity. Each small milestone fueled her spirit. In turn, she became a beacon for others, inspiring classmates to embrace their identities and share their experiences. Maya's honesty sparked conversations around diversity, deepening her connections while simultaneously fortifying her activism. Each friendship that thrived in understanding replaced those strained by apathy, reminding her of the beauty in shared struggles. And through this journey, Maya became a powerful example of transformation, ready to take on the challenges ahead. At the next school assembly, Maya found herself seated next to Sarah, who remained distant yet uncertain. As speakers addressed the importance of unity, she could feel the tension hanging between them. Suddenly, a student stood up, voicing his frustration over the lack of action towards discrimination within the school. The room grew quiet, anticipation pulsating in the air. Maya saw the hesitation in Sarah's eyes, deciding this moment was crucial. "We need to support each other," she whispered, hoping to ignite the spark within her friend. Without thinking, Sarah raised her hand. "I agree," she said, her voice steadying. "We can't ignore this anymore." Maya's heart soared. In that moment, it became evident that standing up for one another was essential to their growth. When the speakers wrapped up and asked for volunteers to join advocacy initiatives, Maya turned to Sarah. "Should we go together?" A heavy pause filled the air, but then Sarah nodded, determination blossoming in her expression. "Yes, let's do it." Together, they stepped forward, hand in hand, ready to embrace a future of understanding and action. Standing up for one another marked a new chapter in their friendship, igniting a commitment to fight against the injustices surrounding them. As the weeks unfolded, Maya and her classmates coordinated numerous events that showcased their growing solidarity. The community rallied. Together, each gathering becoming a platform for shared experiences, healing, and unity. Maya stood proudly at the front of the auditorium during one of their events, students and parents filling the seats. "Today, we stand together, not just as individuals but as a community," she declared, her voice steady and uplifting. "Our stories may differ, but our fight for justice is united." They shared heartfelt testimonials, each voice a thread in the rich tapestry of their experiences. The audience listened intently, the air thick with empathy and understanding. After the event, attendees lingered, discussing their takeaways. The sense of community seemed palpable. Maya could feel it in her bones. Parents approached her, expressing gratitude for the conversations sparked and the connections formed. "Thank you for creating this space for our youth to speak out," one mother stated, her eyes glistening. Maya felt a swell of pride and purpose. "It's just the start. We have to continue to fight for one another, to lift each other up." As they moved forward, it became clear that the collective voices of their community had power. Together, they began to envision a future free from prejudice and discrimination, embracing one another as allies in the fight against injustice. The strength of solidarity ignited hope within them, illustrating that even in adversity, together they could achieve change and understanding, a testament to the beauty of community. Maya stood frozen in her front yard, her heart pounding as she watched the scene unfold across the street. A family friend, Mr. Johnson, was being handcuffed by two police officers. The air was thick with tension, a silence descending over the neighborhood as people peered through windows, unsure whether to move or stay put. "Please, officer, I just want to know what's going on," Mr. Johnson pleaded, his voice shaky but resolute. He was a kind man who lived 2 doors down, known for helping children in the neighborhood with their homework and making the best barbecue. "Step back, sir," one of the officers barked, shoving him against the squad car. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Maya felt a sickening twist in her stomach. She wanted to yell, to protest, but she felt rooted in place, afraid of what would happen if she stepped in. The moment dragged on, each second stretching painfully. Then, she noticed the officer's aggressive demeanor, the way he brushed aside Mr. Johnson's questions, as if his life didn't matter. Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she realized the truth. This wasn't just an isolated event. This was a chilling reminder of systemic racism, a reality that her community faced time and again. Ripping her gaze away from the scene, she turned to run inside, but her feet felt heavy with the weight of helplessness. Whatever sense of safety she believed she had evaporated in that moment, replaced by the harsh understanding that the world could be so unjust. That night, Maya lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the images of Mr. Johnson's arrest. Anger simmered beneath the surface, twisting in her gut. Why did this keep happening? Why did the outrage never seem to translate into action? She tossed and turned, feelings of frustration morphing into a fierce determination. I can't just sit by, she murmured, the quiet of her room no longer suffocating, but emboldening. A spark ignited within her, a need to not only stand up for Mr. Johnson but for herself and everyone else suffering at the hands of injustice. Maya sat up, flicking on her lamp as thoughts raced through her mind. She could channel this pain, this outrage, into something positive. It's time to act, she resolved, her heart racing with inspiration. She thought of her father's words about being the change. It wasn't enough to simply witness what was happening. She had to fight against it. With renewed energy, she grabbed her notebook from the bedside table and began writing down ideas, protest slogans, topics for discussions, people she could reach out to, each scribble fueling her resolve. Her emotions surged, transforming fear into focus. This was her moment to make a difference, to take a stand, and she was ready. The next morning, Maya woke with a newfound purpose. After breakfast, she approached her father, who was sipping coffee and reading the newspaper. Dad, she said, her voice firm, I want to talk to you about something important. Of course, Maya. What's on your mind? He replied, looking up from the paper, sensing the seriousness in her tone. Maya took a deep breath, quickly explaining the incident with Mr. Johnson and her desire to take action. I want to organize a protest, she said, determination shining in her eyes. We need to raise awareness about systemic racism and stand up for our community. Mr. Parker put down his coffee, his expression shifting from surprise to pride. That's an admirable goal, Maya, but protests require planning. Have you thought about how you want to approach it? I have. She clutched her notebook, opening it to reveal her scribbled plans. I want to invite people to share their stories and experiences. Maybe we can even arrange speakers who can address the issue more deeply. Her father nodded, impressed. That's a great start. But remember to reach out to your school's administration, the local community, and even local activists. Mobilizing that support is crucial. Maya felt a surge of excitement. Right, I'll make flyers and go to the community center to talk to people. I don't want to do this alone. Use your voice effectively, he encouraged. Make sure everyone understands what you stand for. This is your chance to inspire others too. With her father's backing, Maya felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She was ready to rise to the occasion, prepared to mobilize her community and foster change. With her plans set into motion, Maya wasted no time reaching out to her friends and allies. At school, she shared her vision, enthusiasm contagious as she spoke about the protest. We need to come together and make our voices heard, she urged during lunch. A few classmates nodded, but others looked uncertain. Do you really think it'll make a difference? One boy asked skeptically. Maya leaned forward, her energy unwavering. Absolutely. If we don't speak up, nothing will change. We owe it to ourselves and our community to fight against this. Encouraged by her passion, a group of her friends decided to join. They began brainstorming other ways to get the word out, posting on social media, talking to their families, and creating flyers to distribute. Each new idea fueled Maya's determination. After school, Maya and her friends gathered at the community center, where she approached local activists, eager to enlist their support. We're organizing a protest to address systemic racism, she explained, her voice steady. Can you help us? The activists exchanged looks, one woman nodding thoughtfully. It takes courage to take a stand. We'll help you get the resources you need. Together, We can amplify your message." With renewed momentum, Maya felt the community coalescing around her idea, drawing strength from their collective voices. They began to form strategies, outlining their goals for the protest, empowering one another in their mission. Maya realized they were not just rallying for themselves, but for their entire community, igniting hope for change in a world that desperately needed it. The day of the protest arrived with a mix of excitement and nerves swirling in the air. Maya stood at the designated location, a public park filled with friends and community members coming together, each holding handmade posters adorned with powerful messages. "Racism is a disease," one read. Another proclaimed, "Our voices matter." Maya felt her heart swell as she looked around. She stepped up onto the makeshift platform, nerves thrumming in her chest. "Thank you all for being here today," she shouted, her voice rising above the crowd. "Today, we stand together to raise our voices against systemic racism and violence." The crowd erupted into cheers, her spirit lifted by the collective energy surrounding her. "We cannot stay silent any longer. We owe it to everyone like Mr. Johnson and countless others who have faced injustice to make our voices heard." As different speakers took the stage, sharing personal stories of discrimination and resilience, Maya felt the tears prick at her eyes. Each narrative resonated within her, echoing the experiences she had witnessed in her own life. It was an outpouring of collective pain, sorrow, and hope. By the time the speeches concluded, Maya knew she had made an impact. Seeing people come together, chanting in unison, was empowering. It wasn't just about the protest. It was about a community igniting a movement. Maya stepped down from the platform, overwhelmed by the solidarity that surrounded her. They were no longer just individuals. They were a collective force ready for change, fueled by a common purpose and a determination to fight for justice. Maya stood at the front of the crowd, her heart racing as she surveyed the sea of people that had gathered in the park. Every face, every voice, pulsed with determination. "We are here for justice," she projected, a banner of solidarity held high above her head. Activism had transformed into a movement, a collection of memories, voices, and stories demanding to be heard. "Justice for all," echoed through the crowd as more people joined. Colorful signs bobbed in the air, each declaration clearer than any speech. "Black Lives Matter," "End racial profiling," "We demand change." The energy was electric, vibrant, as Maya felt her spirit lift. They were no longer alone. They were united in their fight against a common enemy, systemic racism. She stepped onto the makeshift platform where speakers rallied their peers. There was an undeniable strength. In their collective cries, a hunger that resonated deep. "Today, we raise our voices for those who can't," Maya shouted into the megaphone. The crowd responded with a roar, fists raised high, their chanting swelling in volume. As the protests surged, Maya couldn't help but feel empowered by the sight before her. Friends, family, and neighbors stood together with passion emanating from each participant. The pulse of social justice thumped through the crowd, a rhythm of hope and resistance against the tide of adversity they faced. The gathering was reflective of a deeper desire for change, a dream that was finally beginning to ignite. As the protest progressed, the atmosphere shifted. Maya caught sight of police vehicles pulling into the park, their lights flashing. Anxiety gripped her heart, and she exchanged worried glances with her friends. The officers emerged, their uniforms imposing, and the cheerful chants began to dim under the heavy weight of uncertainty. "Clear the area," one officer shouted, walking toward the protesters with a firm stance. "This is an illegal gathering. You need to disperse." Maya felt a chill run down her spine as she watched the line of officers form. The juxtaposition of their authority against the peaceful protest was jarring. "We have a right to be here," she shouted, her voice trembling but resolute. "We're standing up for justice." The tension escalated, anger and fear woven tightly together. Some protesters began to shout back, voices clamoring for their rights. A few in the crowd clung to their resolve, but many flinched as officers moved closer, batons drawn. "Maya, we should leave," one of her friends urged. pulling at her sleeve. "No," she replied firmly. "This is our moment. We can't let fear silence us." But doubt crept into her mind, and she grappled with the terror of what might happen next. The police seemed ready for confrontation, and the once celebratory atmosphere turned serious as the crowd felt the weight of potential chaos looming overhead. In that tense moment, Maya knew she had to act. Grabbing the megaphone with renewed determination, she climbed onto the platform. She scanned the sea of anxious faces, searching for strength. "Listen up, everyone," she called out, her voice echoing loudly. "This is our time to be heard. We cannot let fear win." The crowd fell silent, eyes turning to her, a collective breath held. Today we stand not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has ever felt the sting of injustice. We are fighting for a better future, for our friends, our families, and our community. With every word she spoke, she felt her resolve growing, emboldened by the passion thrumming around her. "Do you feel the power of our voices?" she asked, her heart racing. "This isn't only about us today. It's about those who came before us, and those who will come after." A cheer erupted from the crowd, igniting the spark of courage they all craved. Maya pressed forward. "Together, we are unstoppable. Together, we demand change." Another wave of cheers rippled through the crowd. With that encouragement, the tension began to dissipate. The protesters locked arms, unifying their message, determined to stand firm against authority. In that moment, Maya felt hope wash over her once more. Their collective strength could not be undermined, and she was ready to lead the charge. As the rally surged with renewed vigor, a lone counterprotester stepped forward, clutching a sign that read, "All lives matter." His voice boomed over the crowd. "You're dividing us. What happened to unity?" Maya felt an immediate rush of anger but maintained composure. "That's not what this is about," she responded, stepping off the platform to confront him. "This is about recognizing the specific injustices faced by Black lives." The crowd murmured, watching the interaction unfold, tension creeping back in the air. She continued, "Your statement is true, but it does not negate the fact that Black lives are disproportionately affected by systemic racism." The counterprotester shook his head. "You're just perpetuating division. Division already exists," Maya insisted, her voice unwavering. "This movement is about acknowledging those disparities." Her heart raced. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to engage in dialogue rather than retreating under pressure. Around them, her supporters started to echo her points, emphasizing their stand. Others in the crowd began to engage in discussions about the importance of intersectionality. Maya felt the power of solidarity swelling as she invited the counterprotester to share his thoughts, urging others to listen as well. "Let's seek understanding instead of conflict," she suggested, hoping to bridge the divide. In this exchange, Maya seized a moment of growth, asserting her belief in dialogue, laying the groundwork for conversations that could foster change in a world so often divided by misunderstanding. As the protest intensified, Maya stood at the forefront, her heart racing with adrenaline and uncertainty. Despite the positive energy circulating, fleeting doubt crept into her mind. What if the police moved in to shut everything down? What if someone got hurt? She clenched her fists, glancing at the officers positioned at the entrance of the park, their expressions unreadable. Amid the chants and cheers, Maya felt its weight settling in her chest. The fear of backlash lingered like a shadow in the back of her mind. What if her actions cost her? Would online harassment become unbearable? Her phone had been buzzing incessantly with messages since the protest began. Some supportive, but others divisive and threatening. It seemed like the risk she had taken to fight for justice could also put her life in jeopardy. In that vulnerable moment, she scanned the crowd and caught the eyes of her friends, still holding up their signs high, faces lit with hope and conviction. She remembered the stories shared during earlier discussions, the pain and determination that bound them together. "Maya!" one of her friends called out, breaking her reverie. "We're in this together." Taking a deep breath, she leaned into that thought. "Yes," she whispered to herself. Together, with renewed strength, Maya stepped back onto the platform. No matter what happens, we are here for each other. Our fight for justice unites us, and together, we will prevail. The crowd erupted in cheers, and with that, she felt the weight of doubt begin to lift, replaced by the warmth of solidarity. As the riot of voices swelled around her, Maya drew inspiration from the community that surrounded her. She saw faces of courage transformed by shared purpose. Disparate lives joined together to create something formidable. We need to remember that our stories are intertwined, she announced passionately into the megaphone. When we support one another, we amplify our voices. Every step we take together counts toward shifting the narrative. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Here, in this moment, Maya felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by the sturdy foundation of unity. She observed her friends' faces lit up with resolve. They were no longer standing by. They were standing together. Maya directed the crowd's attention to the stories shared earlier. Every voice we uplift today shines a light on injustice. Our experiences are valid, and when we share them, we strengthen our fight. She saw the waves of affirmation ripple through the rally. With chants echoing in the air, the crowd began to surge forward toward the officers, not with animosity, but with determination. Justice for all, they chanted, a pulse that resonated deep within each participant. The officers maintained their stance, but Maya felt something shift. The protesters weren't just rising for themselves. They were rising for every individual who had faced discrimination, every voice that had been silenced. Maya knew the force of their collective power could not be ignored, and in that moment, she understood that solidarity was their greatest weapon. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the park, causing the crowd to halt in place. It was a flashbang thrown by the police to disperse the gathering. Panic rippled through the crowd as participants flinched and gasped, some screaming in fear. "Stay calm," Maya shouted, raising the megaphone high as her heart raced. She could feel the chaos stirring around her but refused to be swept away by it. "We are strong. We will not let fear tear us apart." As the smoke began to clear, she could see people around her closing in, gripping tightly to their signs. Eyes were wide with uncertainty and fear, but instead of retreating, they remained rooted in solidarity. At that moment, something clicked for Maya. This protest wasn't solely about her. It was about everyone who had suffered. It was about redefining injustice and refusing to back down. She embraced this newfound clarity. Her identity as an advocate had crystallized into something powerful and unyielding. "Every single one of you is valuable," she cried, rallying her supporters. "Your identity fuels this fight. We're not just names on a list. We are living, breathing individuals with worth, deserving of respect and justice." As the cries echoed back to her, a fire ignited within Maya. She felt transformed, ready to claim her power and purpose. The tide of her sense of identity shifted, molding her into a figure that would advocate for those unable to do so. "Together we fight. Together we rise," resonated throughout the park, the crowd swelling with renewed energy, raising their voices as one unified entity, determined to forge ahead regardless of the challenges they faced. Maya stood at the edge of the community park, gazing out at the gathering crowd. The events of the past weeks echoed in her mind. The protests, the conversations, the emotions that surged within her during moments of confrontation. Each experience had woven together a rich tapestry that represented her journey toward understanding justice, a complex labyrinth filled with challenges and revelations. She remembered the fear that had initially gripped her when they challenged authority, and how it had transformed into resilience. Each rally had brought together community members, their voices creating a chorus of hope that resonated beyond the park. Discussions that had once seemed impossible now flowed freely, igniting passionate debates about the unfairness they faced daily. "Maya," one of her friends called, breaking her reverie. "Are you ready to start?" As she turned to face the group, she recognized how far she had come. Once hesitant and unsure, she had found her voice amidst the chaos. The journey had not only equipped her with courage, but also introduced her to the complexity of justice, acknowledging that it often came with pain before healing could be achieved. Determined, she took a deep breath. "Let's make our voices louder than ever before," she asserted, feeling the familiar strength surge within her. She knew the road ahead would still be fraught with obstacles, but she felt ready to navigate it. As Maya reflected on the journey, she recognized the importance of acknowledging the progress made, even amid the ongoing struggle. Each gathering had built a foundation for change, igniting sparks of hope within every heart present. Yet it was essential to understand that significant transformations wouldn't happen overnight. They required consistent effort, and she felt empowered knowing that small victories contributed to the greater fight. At a recent community meeting, organizers discussed how their efforts had brought together individuals who once felt isolated. "We may not have seen immediate results," Maya noted aloud, her voice ringing with conviction. "But look at the conversations we've started. People from different backgrounds are learning from one another. That's powerful." Her friends nodded, a sense of camaraderie bridging their shared mission. They celebrated the gathering of stories, every testimonial adding weight to the struggle. "Remember that young girl who spoke up about her experiences?" one friend chimed in. "Her words were so impactful. She made everyone listen." Maya beamed at the thought. "Exactly. We are lighting fires in others. Our voices are creating a ripple effect. Every time someone shares their story, it encourages someone else to do the same." The realization that each small victory had significance propelled her forward. They weren't just fighting for justice as individuals. They were paving the way for a community united in purpose. Maya felt her heart swell with determination as she envisioned a brighter future grounded in awareness and equality. Maya's grassroots efforts began to flourish as her community rallied in support of the cause. Conversations about justice spread like wildfire, permeating local schools, neighborhoods, and town halls. Each discussion served as a seed planted in fertile ground, nurturing awareness and solidarity among people who had once felt invisible. As she walked through her neighborhood, Maya noticed the banners hung from porches and the chalk drawings on sidewalks, each depicting messages of hope and unity. She smiled at the sight. It was proof that the community was actively engaging in the conversation surrounding systemic issues. "Hey, Maya," a neighbor called out, waving a handmade poster displaying a heart and the words, "Together for Justice." "We can't wait to support the next protest." "Thank you," she replied, her spirit lifting. "Your support means everything. Together, we're creating change." With each interaction, Maya felt the momentum build. Community leaders began organizing forums to discuss local issues, drawing in diverse voices eager to contribute. People started taking ownership of the narrative, and discussions grew louder about the need for systemic reform. As the days passed, she felt empowered by this newfound solidarity. The more people engaged, the more they could shed light on their experiences. Maya understood the importance of these small steps, realizing they were the foundation on which a movement for equality could grow. After the success of recent events, Maya stood at a crossroads, contemplating the path ahead. With a stronger voice and a vibrant community behind her, she embraced the reality that this work would continue long into the future. The fight for justice wasn't just a moment. It was a commitment that required dedication and perseverance. Maya gathered her friends to discuss their next steps. "We've made great progress, but we can't stop here," she urged, pacing back and forth. "There are layers to this problem, and we need to tackle them head-on." Her friends nodded, excitement palpable in the air. "What about organizing workshops to educate others about racial issues in our community?" one suggested. "Yes, we need to empower others to join the cause," Maya affirmed. "Let's reach out to schools, libraries, anywhere we can spread awareness and encourage action." As they outlined strategies, Maya felt invigorated. Each plan represented a step forward, a chance to make a lasting impact. "We can connect with local organizations to strengthen our initiative," she said passionately. "It's about building partnerships and fostering an understanding that justice is a collective responsibility." With the conviction to continue advocating for their cause, Maya knew the road ahead was filled with challenges, but she felt empowered to face them. Together, they would strive to pave the way for a brighter, more equitable future. A commitment imbued with purpose, resilience, and hope. Standing on the stage at the community rally, Maya looked out at the crowd gathered before her. Faces filled with anticipation and resolve reminded her of their shared journey. With her heart pounding in her chest, she stepped forward, ready to deliver a crucial message. Together, we have the power to change the narrative, she called out, her voice rising above the murmurs. Our fight isn't just for us. It's for everyone who has ever felt marginalized or unheard. Today, we stand as one, different backgrounds, united in purpose. The crowd erupted in applause, their enthusiasm fueling her passion. We have faced struggles, but together we are stronger, she continued. Let's continue to lift each other up, to share our experiences, and to engage in meaningful conversations. Our unity is our strength. As she concluded, the atmosphere crackled with energy, and Maya felt an overwhelming sense of hope. This dedication to activism not only embodied her present, but also promised a brighter future for generations to come. Today, they weren't just advocating for change. They were planting the seeds of empowerment through unity, ready to shape a world destined for greater understanding and equality.